When we gaze out upon the global cultural landscape through our screens, what we're seeing is a brutal Darwinian struggle of competing mental frameworks. Who among us in the past 5 years has not sat slack-jawed at a staff meeting, during a cocktail party, or while watching the news and not marveled at the stupidity on display? It's not your imagination. People are getting stupider, and the reason is not what you might think. A notable study from Northwestern University analyzed data from nearly 400,000 Americans between 2006 and 2018. The findings revealed declines in 3 out of 4 cognitive domains assessed, with only spatial reasoning showing improvement. This suggests a broad-based decline in cognitive abilities over the 13-year period. Forbes also reported on this study, emphasizing that the decline in IQ scores is significant and marks a departure from the consistent increases observed throughout the 20th century. Figure 1 illustrates how dramatically test performances increased from the 1940s to 2000 on various cognitive measures. These improvements were continuous and approximately linear up until the mid-1990s. By the early 21st century, however, researchers began to ask whether this upward trend was slowing or even stopping in developed countries. People are getting stupider. And I'm not referring to the good stuff, like the Terrence Howard rabbit hole.
Because the universe is based off of equanimity, which Einstein left out in his theory of relativity, the balancing...
Or the rise of the flat earth movement.
Here is how flat earthers believe the universe works. They believe the Earth is a flat disk which looks like this. The North Pole is at the center, with Antarctica forming an ice wall around the outer edges.
The entire adult baby diaper movement.
The crib altogether was around $350 to $500. Money well spent, in my opinion.
Make you happy.
Or the Paul Brothers Forest.
I've never seen a dead person.
Or Fire Festival.
The cultural experience of the decade, Fire Festival.
Or the Will Smith slaps Chris Rock controversy. Wow. This is the good stuff. Who among us in the past 5 years has not been plagued by a pervasive sense of intellectual loneliness? Like the feeling of I'm all alone here. These people are idiots.
Boy, everyone is stupid except me.
In The Closing of the American Mind by Alan Bloom, Bloom argues that the American higher education system has failed due to a shift away from traditional liberal arts and intellectual rigor toward relativism and moral openness. Bloom contends that universities fail to cultivate critical thinking and a deep engagement with classic texts, instead promoting a shallow egalitarian culture that avoids confronting fundamental questions about truth, virtue, and the human condition. What you're experiencing is the rise of the new stupidity. Stupidity is the symptom. The disease is fundamentalism. No, it's not your imagination. Your sense of isolation is real. You are intellectually isolated. The new stupidity, the fact that nearly everyone is getting considerably less intelligent, is a byproduct of the mental architecture of fundamentalism. Fundamentalism, not as a religious doctrine, but as a cognitive structure, is making everyone stupider. This new stupidity is laying waste to our culture, to your school, to journalism, movies, TV, politics, and public discourse. The new stupidity is a kind of nearly invisible, global intellectual plague on par with the Black Death. When we gaze out upon the global cultural landscape through our screens, what we're seeing is a brutal Darwinian struggle of competing mental frameworks, each vying for our attention and our allegiance, from accelerationist technofuturism and anarcho-fascism to tech bro grind culture and the Dark Enlightenment. Each of these competing stories provides the listener with a way of bringing order to the chaos of contemporary life. Each of these mental frameworks makes sense of the deep mystery of life. Each of these stories, while fancy in name, tells a reductivist and at its core, easy to understand story about contemporary life. Like a Wuhan lab leak, the escape of fundamentalism onto the internet, then into the global culture, led to a gain of function by other ideologies. Other previously non-fundamentalist ideologies gained the function of fundamentalist properties. Other previously non-fundamentalist ideas had to become fundamentalist architecturally in order to survive in the new biome, like a closed system under pressure. A fundamentalist worldview creates the conditions for a counterforce that mirrors its rigidity. Now, as a survival mechanism, ideas and personalities on the internet must gain fundamentalist properties or they will be out-selected by the algorithms.
You wrote a scathing review about Ghostbusters.
It was quite measured. It's just that everybody else was lying that they liked the movie when nobody really did.
And then what happened?
So I exchanged some words with Leslie Jones, one of the leads, who I was unimpressed with. Like, I was unimpressed with all of them. I cracked some jokes. I was mean and bitchy, like I always am. And if I crack a few jokes at a Hollywood megastar's expense.
All of our forms of entertainment, music, film, political discourse, journalism, and education are now poisoned by the mental architecture of fundamentalism. Not as a religious doctrine, but as a cognitive structure, an epistemology based on rigid, absolute certainties. The internet, with its engagement farming and hyper-optimization by the algorithms, has created an inescapably fundamentalist universe. Today, we have a thriving online ecosystem of mullahs and preachers, but this time, they aren't hellfire and damnation religious figures. They have names like Hassan Piker, Logan and Jake Paul, Andrew Tate, Ben Shapiro, Kylie and Kendall Jenner, and Bronze Age pervert. Each of these new high priests is selling a hyperbolic, hyper-real, and mutually exclusive worldview. Now, every hot take comes with its own priesthood. That sinking feeling you get at your staff meeting or while doom-scrolling clips of Sonny Hostin's latest unhinged rant on The View, or when you suddenly realize that your art history class has become a hostage situation, and you're the hostage. All of this is a byproduct of the true believers to the one true faith. And that one true faith just so happens to be their faith, be it left or be it right, be it Never Trump or MAGA, Resist, Just Stop Oil, the constitutional right to bear arms, trad wife chic, or Antifa. Sonny Hostin's extreme level of personal conviction, the passion displayed by your wild-eyed art history professor, or Jake Tapper, Ben Shapiro, or Hassan Piker, it's their extreme commitment to the moral certitude of their position that would be quite at home among the 9/11 hijackers. Take a hard look at your professor or your Facebook friend or your fanatical coworker. It's these colleagues, friends, coworkers, and influencers with the most conviction, who feel the most deeply, whose social media posts are laced with quasi-religious fervor. It's they who have most likely built for themselves an impenetrable fortress of wrong ideas, fortified with the battlements of emotion, turrets of personal conviction, and armaments of performative righteousness. It's your Facebook friend with rampant Trump derangement syndrome, your most radical professor, your most fanatical coworker, or your neighbor with his "you can take my gun when you pry it from my cold dead hand" bumper sticker, who has been irreparably frozen by the icy finger of fundamentalism. In 1919, in William Butler Yeats' often quoted poem, The Second Coming, we find a visionary reaction to the spiritual and civilizational upheaval that World War I unleashed. In the poem, Yeats warns us, quote, "The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity." Piker, Hostin, Tate, the Jenners, Shapiro, Kanye, to Jake and Logan, the algorithm rewards passionate intensity, bombast, and lunacy, and punishes complexity, sensitivity, and nuance. Fueled by the algorithms of greasy incel super nerds, the cash of tech bro billionaires, and the engagement of hyper-optimized social media posts, stupidity has become the default mode network of human behavior. The new stupidity is inescapable. Pay close attention at your next staff meeting or in your next myth, ritual, and symbol, the anthropology of meaning seminar. Pay attention to that professor or while watching the latest highlight clips from the Jake Tapper Original Sin train wreck. If you know what to look for, you'll immediately spot these 5 properties of fundamentalism at play nearly anywhere you find yourself isolated by stupidity. Number 1, binary thinking. We're surrounded by good versus evil, us versus them, truth versus lies narratives. Sonny Hostin on the left and Andrew Tate on the right are more binary than a light switch. Number 2, infallible sources. Your staff meeting or Facebook friend will lean heavily into scripture, science, party line affiliation, or the Constitution, whether it's lab coat Stalin and COVID vaccine hysteria and trust the science, or the right to bear arms and the infallibility of the Constitution, because nothing says critical thinking like blind allegiance in a lab coat or a powdered wig. Number 3, a high need for closure. Your most radical professor will display a need for closure. Any form of ambiguity is a threat to the narrative. Number 4, cognitive moralizing. Jake Tapper, Sonny Hostin, Andrew Tate, and Hassan Piker will all rely on cognitive moralizing. They will state clearly that what is correct is also good, and that they are correct. Therefore, if you disagree with them, not only are you wrong, but you are bad. Obviously, the algorithm rewards virtue. Just ask Hassan Piker's merch store. And finally, number 5, look for a punitive reaction to dissent, particularly in educational environments and in online communities. The overwhelming majority of essays in schools are simple ethical litmus tests engineered to screen the student for the correct ideological position, not the quality of reasoning. The punitive reaction to dissent in these environments is a bad grade. Office hours are now held in the re-education tent. These 5 properties of fundamentalism are the 5 horsemen of the intellectual apocalypse. There is a way out of this labyrinth of idiocy, out of this smooth-brained clown show. Our salvation, the Messiah, the Moshiach, arrives in the form of the Contrarian. Most of what humans confidently know about the world isn't derived from personal observation or experiment, but from what communities and trusted sources have taught us. As an example, I accept that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old and that electrons exist, even though I haven't measured deep time or seen subatomic particles myself. When you really stop to think about your firmly held beliefs and our world, you begin to realize that most of our essential beliefs aren't based on our own experience. I have no access to an electron microscope and wouldn't know what I'm looking at even if I did. So modern epistemology recognizes something called testimony, learning through others. Most of an individual's beliefs are gained secondhand from books, newspapers, the in-group affiliation, television, and the internet. In other words, we rely on our social group and cultural inheritance for the vast majority of beliefs, from scientific facts to moral values. Over time, shared beliefs become woven into the environment and traditions. As generations of people in a culture tread the same mental path, they wear a trail in the grass of culture, making it easier for others to follow. In this way, shared beliefs become embedded in a culture and a cultural materiality, leaving an engraved path that guides future members of the group. This testimony and in-group affiliation is the primary mechanism that fundamentalism exploits to make us all stupider. Individuals form their core beliefs about the world, in most cases based upon perceived group consensus, whether or not they believe it to be valid or correct. Dissenting evidence or doubt gets self-censored for the sake of harmony, leading even intelligent individuals to make disastrously flawed decisions. Dissenting evidence or doubts get self-censored for the sake of harmony. They don't think that? Then I don't think that. Groupthink is essentially conformity on steroids. A whole group can become captivated by its own narrative, blind to warnings from outside or from within. In-group affiliation and testimony are absolutely essential ways that we can come to know the world. I cannot run my own experiments to determine if the Earth is flat or round. I cannot directly observe cellular phenomenon. I cannot step back in time to live with the disciples. I cannot directly observe the effects of tariffs on global trade and economics. And so therefore, every human must rely on in-group affiliation, testimony, and institutions like schools to form a worldview. So who is the contrarian? The contrarian says no and stands apart from the crowd. The contrarian looks with a cold eye upon the assumed values of the group, of their tribe. The contrarian is the person who looks around at their staff meeting, in their sociology class, at their church or mosque and says, no. The contrarian understands the undeniable danger of the crowd. The contrarian casts a critical eye upon mass social movements and is highly suspicious of the emotion of the crowd. The contrarian is alone in the crowd. The contrarian questions the foundational beliefs of their peer group. But above all else, the contrarian holds their own deeply held beliefs up to scrutiny and allows for the complexity and indeterminate nature of so many of the most important issues of our age. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity.